Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about this issue: why every musician should be a singer. Now, you may not be a singer, but the proposal that I want to make in this video is that whether you're primarily a singer or not, I think it's just such a good idea that every musician should sing. Now, there's bound to be some natural resistance to this idea. For example, there are people in the world who understandably don't like singing. There are people in the world who just think, well, I can't sing, or if I do sing, it's such a ghastly noise, nobody would want to listen to it. There are people who think, well, why should I sing? Actually, I'm a pianist, or I'm a trumpeter, or I'm a guitarist, so that's my thing. I'm not that interested in singing. Perfectly legitimate objections to the proposal. But I want to suggest at least 4 reasons why I think it's a great idea that every musician should sing. And the first reason why we might just think about trying to mobilize the whole world to sing actually is that it's very good for us. It's good for our physical, mental and emotional health. So let's put that as a thought. So our physical, emotional and mental health. And there's been a lot of work done in recent years on this very topic. And it's very interesting now that even health services are employing singing teachers to be part of a kind of therapy to help with asthmatic patients and so on. It's often used in special needs environments as well. For people, children or adults who are struggling with communication issues sometimes, actually getting them singing is a great way of enabling that communication. Because singing is such a great means of expressing ourselves. It's a great way to relieve emotions. Sometimes it's a way of dealing with relieving emotions that we haven't got the words to express. So it's very good for our health before we think about anything more specific to musicians. So as a kind of sort of mission in the world, trying to get the world to sing would be a fantastic ambition for these reasons. Okay, here's a second thought. Your first contact with music was probably through your voice. We learn to speak using our voices, don't we? And young children very naturally sing. If you've ever been in the company of a young child for more than a few minutes, you've probably heard them sing. So in that sense, the voice is everyone's first instrument. So I want to make that little proposal. The voice is your first instrument. I mean, you might say, well, no, I'm a first studied pianist. Yeah, sure. But the first instrument that you came to was the voice. Therefore, whichever instrument you now consider to be your primary thing, there's a huge amount to be maintained, to be gained by maintaining that link with the human voice. Okay, here's a third thought. When you sing, your body is your instrument. So let's just put that thought. Your body is your instrument. So, if you play the piano or the violin or something, well, you're playing it, but the instrument is something else. When you sing, your body and your instrument are absolutely the same thing. And because of that, your voice is physically linked to your hearing. Now, musicians know that developing the ear is absolutely essential to the cause. Whatever we're doing musically, we've got to develop the ear. That's a lifelong progression. We just try to keep developing yet further. So it's possible to develop the ear without having to sing, sure. But in the long run, it's so much more effective if we can get beyond any barriers that the notion of singing might present. I mean, I've spent years listening to people objecting to having to sing in exam oral tests. And I completely understand that singing can feel embarrassing, it can feel unnecessary. But those oral tests and exams, for example, are not really trying to determine who's got a fabulous voice and who hasn't, who's going to be the next pop star or the next Pavarotti or something. That's not the point of it. There's a very powerful feedback loop between the ears and the voice. So vocalizing is a really super way of developing oral skills, especially when it comes to pitch. So essential skills like learning to pitch, bang in tune, really important if you're searching for reliable intonation. So that's something really important to singers, very important to string players, very important to wind players. You know, you've got to make sure that you can hear the pitch, not just in some vague way, but in a very specific way so that you can play bang in tune. But you also want to develop relative pitch. You know, what's the relationship between one note and the next? Can I hear intervals? If this is an F, do I know what a D is? Can I hear all that in my head before I play it? So I've got that oral skill. If I hear an interval, do I know immediately what it is? If I hear one note, do I know what the next note is? So if you're a composer, you've got ideas in your head you can then write down, or if you're listening to something, you can immediately process it and imagine what the notation is. If you're going to sight read, you can hear it before you sing it. It's relative pitch is an unbelievably empowering skill for any musician. Hearing melodic intervals, as I've said, but also hearing harmonic intervals, hearing chords, hearing chord progressions. Even sharpening the awareness of rhythm is sometimes more effectively achieved through the voice than simply by clapping or tapping rhythms. So this whole kind of physical connection on the thesis that your body is your instrument when you sing. And then on a different tack, all the kind of expressive benefits. So let's just put that down as a sort of summary heading. The expressive benefits of singing. So what do I mean by that? Well, in my teaching experience, I've often found that singing is the best way to help musicians think in phrases. All the more so when you're dealing in an area like mine, you know, keyboard instruments, teaching people the piano or the organ. You know, when you play a keyboard instrument, it's very easy to kind of process your way from one note to the next or from one chord to the next without really feeling any connection of the phrase. You know, you don't need to breathe between phrases. If you're playing a wind instrument, you need to take a breath at the end of a phrase. If you're playing a keyboard instrument, you could just be playing smoothly all day long and never allow any phrase ending to breathe. You can play in a way that's quite robotic on a keyboard instrument. You can play accurately, you can play rhythmically, but without necessarily sensing the climax of a phrase. You know, where does a phrase travel to, you know? It's terribly important, isn't it, that music is always on a journey. We're never flatlining from one note to the next. We're building up to a climax. We're coming away from a climax. You know, just how are we achieving all of that? And you could say as a keyboard player, you could just play notes and rhythms and never have any sense of the shape of a phrase, where a climax comes, how to breathe at the end. This would be true for other people as well, be true for guitarists to some extent for other string players, for percussionists. I think if you're a wind or a brass player, well, that does involve a physical effort that's akin to the effort that singers have to make. So to some extent, thinking in phrases is already enhanced by the physical effort required to play a wind or a brass instrument. You do have to breathe. You do have to make more of an effort if you're going up to higher notes, for example. You know, when we sing, we have to take in sufficient breath to sustain the phrase. We're not going to take a breath, sing a note, take a breath, sing a note, la, la, la. There's no sense of phrase if I do that, is there? So I need to take in plenty of breath to sustain the phrase. We have to think about precise pitch ahead of reproducing it. If I'm playing the piano and it says C, I can play C. If it says D, I can play D. If I'm singing, I've got to think I'm singing C, and I've got to think what D is before I sing it so I can sing D, and not just go wildly off somewhere else. We've got to connect one note with the next. So When we're singing, we become much more aware of narrow intervals and wider intervals. We begin to be able to label those and think, I know how to sing up a third or down a fourth or whatever it is. We sense physically the peak or the peaks of the phrase. I mean, one thing I often encourage keyboard players to do is to make up words to enable them to sing the melodic lines that they're playing. Sometimes quite silly words, really, doesn't really matter, but it just encourages them to put an emphasis on the key notes that are associated with key syllables. So, for example, if you had a short phrase that went like this and you put it to words that you just make up, I like ice cream. Do you see what happens there when you sing that? You're thinking, I like ice cream. You take a breath so you can sing those 4 notes. I like ice cream. You know, so actually you're thinking of a phrase. You're thinking that it's kind of building to this climax and then maybe shading off for the last note. But if you don't put it to words, it's possible just to go, which is kind of processing notes, processing rhythm, but there's nothing very expressive going on. The minute you sing it and you associate words with it, actually it works quite well. So it's quite a useful exercise and one that often people quite enjoy. Looking at a phrase and thinking, can I think of some words that would fit this phrase? And then can I sing it in such a way that I'm kind of drawing emphasis to these key points? Physically feeling the rise and the fall of the phrase, thinking, oh, actually, I want a crescendo here or diminuendo there. And just being aware of where the strong beats are, where the weak beats are, or any other rhythmic complication that might be going on. That's why I say that this is also rhythmic as well as in terms of pitch. But I think it often is the case that when I've worked with keyboard players who maybe are just playing in this slightly less than potentially very expressive way, let's put it that way, that by getting them to associate words, suddenly it transforms from a kind of robotic approach to something that's much more musical. And certainly with a keyboard instrument, I mean, sometimes you've got to put so much work into just learning notes, learning chords, learning rhythms, that it kind of kills the expression while you're just going through the logistics of trying to learn a piece. So you need a way then to be able to sit back from that and say, well, now I've conquered those logistics. How do I turn this into a piece of music? The human voice can be wonderful. So all the expressive benefits that come out of that too. So I hope I'm beginning to convince you, you know, if you're not primarily a singer or if you've got reservations about singers, that if you're any kind of musician, it's just really a good idea to sing. So don't worry about whether you're claiming to be a singer or not. Put all those isms to one side, but start thinking about these real benefits of singing. But what happens if you really do believe that you can't sing? Now, lots of people are embarrassed by the idea of singing, even young people as well as adults, but other people love singing, so they're really up for this. They'll go for it straight away. That's fine. And I've got plenty of sympathy with those who really don't want to go there, especially with young men going through the breaking voice stage when they might have a very limited vocal range, and when they even speak, never mind sing, they have a tendency to kind of yodel about the landscape. That's all very difficult for them. They're not quite sure what's going to come out next. So for them, this approach might be something that's best left until the voice is a little bit more settled. Although some of them have got great whistling skills that would do very nicely. Lots of adults have got hang-ups, and one that I've heard so many times is people saying, oh, well, when I was at school, somebody told me, usually a music teacher, strangely, that I was tone deaf. And then they just believe this for the rest of their lives. They go through the next, I don't know how many decades thinking, well, I can't sing, I'm tone deaf. But very few people are actually tone deaf. We'll come back to that. But it's worth trying to surmount these barriers and really kind of question these things that you might have been told earlier in life that actually probably are not true. So most people are not tone deaf. And sometimes it's just working at it a little bit and trying to park these isms to one side, and then you can start to feel the benefits of it. So let's just think about, what are the common barriers to singing? Well, in my experience, it kind of boils down to 1, 2, or 3 of these things. So let's just put these up here as we go. And the first little barrier to this, let's just reimpose my G for singer, how about that? The first thing I'm going to think is just having difficulty pitching notes. So difficulty pitching notes. You know, for some people it comes quite naturally. You know, somebody plays them a note or sings them a note and they can just naturally sing it. Other people end up singing something that's completely the wrong pitch. And that then kind of reinforces all these hang-ups we've been talking about. But it's a legitimate difficulty that some people have, just actually kind of hearing a note, reproducing it. Can we actually pitch it? The second thing is, you know, the people who can sort of vaguely pitch the notes, but have a kind of lack of control to reach the next target note. So a kind of lack of control that means that they might sing some of the notes right, but actually if there's a wide leap or something, well, it goes wrong because they don't have the control. Okay, then there's kind of another group of people where it's really related to the hang-ups that people have about singing, that you end up producing this kind of soft, rather reticent tone or sound that makes the whole kind of vocal effort lack confidence and becomes sort of unreliable. So if you like, a kind of reluctant approach. And then because you're kind of lacking confidence with the whole thing, you start to sing like this. And it's not really kind of quite a note. And if you go up, you go, and it just sounds like somebody being ill rather than somebody singing. So you have to have a kind of confidence. You have to take a deep breath. You have to stand tall or sit up tall and just have the confidence to sing and make mistakes. I mean, most musicians have made huge progress by making mistakes. So that's just the same with singing than anything else. So those are three quite common barriers, and I want to acknowledge them because I think they're perfectly genuine. So how do we respond to those barriers? So if you're kind of thinking, well, yes, I can kind of see the principle of what this guy's saying, but I've got problems with one or more of these things, well, what could you do? Well, if the first thing I want to say about this is if you have trouble pitching notes, it's highly unlikely that you're tone deaf, regardless of what anybody might have said to you in the past. Lots of people do believe they're tone deaf, but in reality, very few are. There've been lots of different studies done on this, but there often comes to the conclusion that 4% or fewer people are genuinely tone deaf. So pitching is a skill. It needs developing like any other skill. You know, start with single notes. Play a note. See if you can sing it back. Ah, ah. Keep repeating the same note until you think, yeah, I think I've got it. Move on to another one. So just playing a note, singing it back. But before you sing it back, listen carefully. Hear the note in your head before you sing it. Because if you hear a note and then you just sing something, all sorts of funny sounds can come out. So hear the note, process that sound, try and imagine yourself singing that note, and then produce the sound. It will be much more accurate than just randomly, literally pitching in somewhere. So, hear the note. Was it right? Was it wrong? You know, if you can hear that you've sung a wrong note, well, did it just take time to settle? You know, some people do this kind of thing. And then they come into orbit. That's great. If you come into orbit, you've achieved a huge amount. Then the next thing is just to think, well, can I do that without having to do all the experimental gliding about the landscape first? That's because you haven't heard the note before you've tried to sing it. You've sung something and then you've adjusted it as you're processing the note. So trying to sing into the middle of the note straight away by hearing it first is really good. If you're singing a note and you're thinking, well, I can hear that it's the wrong note, but I don't know what the right note is. Well, try that little sort of scooping around the landscape thing. What happens if you just go up a bit or down a bit? So you think that's not right, but I don't know what's wrong. Well, try going up. Well, that's not sounding good. What happens if I go down? and then suddenly you think, oh, I think I found it, you know. So just a little bit of experimentation, see if you can locate the correct note. And then when you can deal with single notes, try pairs of notes. Do it fairly slowly at first, then see if you can do it a bit quicker. Then build up groups of 3 notes, gradually building up to a phrase. You know, and the other thing is, if you're just dealing with 1, 2 or 3 notes, it takes away that memory fear as well. Quite often I found in exams, you know, you ask people to repeat a phrase and they're so worried about, oh, I can't remember all the notes in this phrase, it's just too long, that the pitch goes wrong just because they can't memorize. So if you're doing 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes, well, the memory thing is really kind of taken out of the equation. So you can really concentrate on the pitching and the vocal dimensions to get there. On this thing about kind of lacking vocal control and producing a reticent sound, I think that's a very common issue actually. Even amongst people who are otherwise quite confident musicians, people who play their main instrument with great confidence, but when they come to sing, it's a totally different picture for them. And musicians, I find, often beat themselves up with that. I should be able to do this. It's not a very helpful thought, is it? Understandable, but it just puts in more kind of psychological barriers. But even if you're a good musician in other areas, you may just need to practice singing a bit, if only just to build up a bit of vocal confidence, you know? Are you the kind of person who sort of sings as you're walking along or sings in the shower or something, you know, just to build up a bit of vocal confidence? Many musicians who struggle with this just simply refuse to sing as a means of avoiding the agenda. Totally understand that. But actually just building a bit of confidence with singing can make a huge difference. So of course it's important to acknowledge that maybe up to 4% of the population is tone deaf. And if that's a genuine concern, it is possible to take a test to determine whether you really are tone deaf or not. But for the other 96% or more, all of the issues we've considered here can be surmounted with a bit of work. And if singing really challenges you, well, maybe it's worth the investment of a bit of time to have a few lessons with a good singing teacher who could work wonders just by addressing your posture and your breathing and giving you a bit of confidence in a bit of vocal technique to support what you're doing. But it's all worth thinking about. So for any musician, your singing voice is an incredibly useful asset. You really don't need to be a vocal superstar. You just need to have a go. You need to sing. So you can use your voice to train your ear further. And wherever you are in terms of oral development, this is a means of pushing things on further. So go for it. And let's get the whole world singing. You know, in the UK, apparently there are more people singing in choirs than attend football matches. That's amazing, isn't it? So the whole choral thing is big anyway, but let's get the whole world singing. And if you're a musician who's thinking, actually, I really do need to do something about enhancing my oral skills, and I really want to do something about developing my natural expressive talents, I'm hoping that some of the arguments that I've presented here will just encourage you to take that brave step and kind of fulfill this kind of statement on the board why every musician should be a singer. If you've enjoyed this video, you might want to go to our website, www.mmcourses.co.uk, where you can find details of our many online courses. There are lots of single one-off videos on YouTube like this, but if you're wanting a structured course in music theory or oral training or analysis or whatever it is, we've got lots of things there that can help you. Many things absolutely linked to this video: sight singing courses, oral dictation courses, oral test courses, preparing you for exams, but equipping you with those particular skills as well. So lots of relevant things there that you might find helpful. And while you're on the homepage, just click on Maestros, and that will tell you about our wonderful Maestros group at Music Matters, which is a kind of growing global community where we have all sorts of exciting things. So if you're a maestro, it's a way of supporting the channel. You get fun things like loyalty badges, emoji, and so on. You can see behind the scenes content. You can help choose video topics for the future. And if you join at levels 2 and 3, you can also attend our monthly live stream where there's a kind of in-depth teaching input from me. And then we have another session where composers, performers can submit their work, their compositions, their recorded performances, harmony exercises, whatever they're working on. And you can get some personal feedback from me, and we share that in the group so we can all learn from each other. Wonderfully supportive group that I'm sure you'd enjoy being a part of.